This is the Advertising Blueprint with Ryan Pancoke.
Hey, welcome back. This is Ryan Pancoke with the Advertising Blueprint. This is an advertising strategies podcast for small business owners who try to make their business grow. So today's episode, we're going to be going over digital advertising. So digital advertising, one term that you're going to hear over and over. This is a common phrase. People say it is the wild, wild west of advertising. And the reason why it's the wild, wild west of advertising is because it's constantly changing all the time. So first off, it's technology based. So just like anything else on the internet, just like any other app, just like anything else that's technology based, it's constantly changing. Something that you used 5 years ago, you may never use ever now. Something that was the best 10 years ago, now something is way, way better and it's way, way cheaper. So technology is kind of changing all the time. This is very technology based. So they go hand in hand. It's constantly changing. Now, the one thing that makes this a little bit different, it's the laws are changing when it comes to digital advertising. So I'm sure a lot of people have seen in the news that over the last few years, Congress has really called in a lot of different people and learned about, sort of like the data mining and learning what these companies are learning about these people. Because when it comes to digital advertising, they can really narrow things down. I mean, I always joke around saying that your phone actually knows more about you than your spouse does, because your phone knows where you're at, what you're searching for, what you're buying. It knows your hobbies. It knows what pages you like. They really get to know exactly who you are. I mean, it's pretty scary to think about. You just zoned out. It's not happening. It's not happening. You just have to give in at some point. But because the laws are constantly changing, I mean, literally, Mark Zuckerberg went into Congress 3 or 4 times in a year. And guess what? The rules on how to advertise on Facebook, things you can say, things you can't say, different offers you can have, changed with it. So this is one podcast where let's see how well it ages. Something that may be true today will probably not be true in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So hopefully you're listening to this podcast fairly soon after I release it. So first, let's go over some of the pros of digital advertising. So the first biggest pro, it's you can really narrow people down. So there's a lot of businesses where they're not trying to target 90% of the entire population. They're not selling sandwiches where everyone can go in and eat it. They may have something very specialty, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, where maybe only 2% of the population. Maybe it's a business that goes, hey, I'm going to go B2B, because there's a lot less business and there's a lot less opportunity when you go B2B, because there's a lot less business owners than there are just general population. So being able to narrow things down is nice. And when I say narrow down, I'm talking marital status, income, geography, gender, hobbies, different pages someone may like. I mean, you can really narrow things down and get exactly who you want. Something else that I really like about digital advertising, in some of my earlier podcasts, I talked about if you may be starting out and only have a $500 budget or a $1,000 budget, and you still want to grow your business. Well, one easy way that you can do that is with social media, and they've really made it easy to basically place your own ads and sort of promote what you want to promote. So for those new time business owners, for those people who have a smaller budget, I do think online advertising is a good way to go for those people with smaller budgets, where you put 100% of your money all into one thing to try to get people in. So those are some really good things about it. Now, I do want to talk about some of the cons, because it's not the end-all be-all. There are pros and cons to everything. So the biggest 2 cons are, first off, people share screens. So even though someone might be targeting someone like myself, well, if I give my phone to my younger child because we're going through dinner and I don't want to have him scream, so I let him watch YouTube, they're going to be serving him up the ads that were meant for me that are actually going to my child. So it's not a perfect system, but you can say that about anything. Now, the other huge con, there have been studies showing that a lot of people think over 50% of the digital traffic are bots. So whenever you hear someone talk about how many impressions you get, wow, you got 50,000 impressions. We typically, rule of thumb, cut it right in half. So if someone says, hey, you reached 100,000 people, in my mind, we actually reached 50,000 people. If someone says you got 200 clicks, we probably got more like 100 clicks. So I've seen different studies where some people might say it's 50% of the internet. I've seen other studies saying it's 70 to 80%. Now, I'm not going to act like I'm some sort of expert and know exactly how many bots are on the internet, but I do know it is prevalent, and it is something where it's not going to stop. The reason why it's not going to stop is because companies like Google, like your Facebook, like your Twitter, they make money off those bots. Every time there's clicks, they're charging the client, you, for those clicks. They're charging and charging and charging. So why are they going to stop the bots if they're making money off of it? Do you think any business owner is going to say, you know what? I want to cut my business in half. No one's going to do that. So it's one of those situations where, again, as long as you can acknowledge that fact, then you'll be okay. But just want to put that out there and let people know. Okay, so now I want to go over the main ways that people can do digital advertising. So the first way, we've kind of already talked about it, is your social media advertising. So you can do your own advertising on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, anything like that. And I recommend doing this if you have a new product or a new service. So the one thing I really like about it, it's you're putting something in front of someone without them even asking for it. So when it comes to, let's say like a Google AdWords, we'll go over that here in like a second, people are searching for it. They know what they're going for. This is more of a, hey, you didn't know that I have this special kind of gadget. Here it is. Hey, you didn't know that I have a brand new store that you've never heard of that's 10 blocks away from you. To put it right in front of them. Because people don't know those things exist. They're not going to be able to search for it through Google and say, hey, I want to look for this, because they don't even know that it even exists. So that's one huge advantage about social media advertising. They also have made it very, very user-friendly, where most people, if you can navigate through social media, you can typically run basic advertising on there for your smaller companies or your brand new companies. Now, someone who owns an advertising agency like myself, we would run multiple ads, we would run multiple photos, multiple offers, and we could basically tell which ones were running better, which ones were performing better, and we would really hone things in. But for those new business owners, it's okay to have that one message or two messages. You don't need 15 messages. So that's one good way to start off your digital advertising. Now, another way that we just talked about too was your Google AdWords. So Google AdWords, when you search for something, when you search for restaurants in Dallas, well, you're going to see it's going to list all these restaurants. Now you might narrow it down and say, I want, let's say an Italian restaurant. Well, now you're only going to get Italian. Well, if you look at the list, typically the first 2 or 3, it'll say right next to it, very, very small ad. So that's what people pay for. Underneath the ads are the SEO, search engine optimization. And we talked about that in a prior podcast. But right now we're talking about the ad portion of it. So that's really good for a a brand new business where people know exactly what you are and they can find you. So let's say if you open up a brand new bowling alley. Well, a lot of people who are going to go bowling, either they know where a place is or they're going to go on the phones and they're going to type in bowling alley in Phoenix. And they're going to be able to look at exactly where these bowling alleys are at. They're going to look on the Google map and say, well, here's where I'm at. Here's where I'm at. Google AdWords nowadays is the phone book. So for you placing ads at the top of the page, that's basically like back in the 70s and 80s, getting a big full page, yellow page, because people would be more likely to see it. So you're just putting your ad at the very top of the list so more people can see it. Now, the one thing about for the Google AdWords, it's a little more complicated to place the ads yourself, but there are a lot of tutorial videos where I have seen people manage. It's not too bad. The one thing about Google AdWords that people should know is Google AdWords is all auction based. And when I mean that it's auction based, it's all based on how many people are buying it. So if you are a specialty, if I have a specialized hip surgeon doctor and he only does hip surgery, well, there might only be 5 to 8 doctors in the city of Denver that only specialize in hips. So for someone like that, it's really easy to get on page 1. And if he would want to place an ad on page 1, it might only cost $1 or $2 per click because there's no one else buying it. Now, if it's someone else, let's say if it's a roofer that like is in Colorado, well, there might be, let's say, 100 roofers in Colorado. So if there's nobody buying that ad, he might pay that same $2. But if there's 5 people paying for that ad, it might go up to $4 or $5. If there's 8 people buying the ad, well, now it might go up to 10. And one thing that's even crazy too is that same roofer, let's say if one day there's 7 people buying it and he's paying $8, $9 a click. If it hails and there's 20 other roofers who say, I'm willing to buy this same exact AdWord, this exact same phrase, roofing Denver, that click that costs you $8 on Tuesday might cost you $60 on Wednesday. It's all based on how many people are buying it and what they're willing to spend to be at the very top of the page. So then being auction-based was actually really smart because people can outbid each other to go to the top of the page. You can set your limit and say, I'm not willing to pay more than $2 a click. Okay, well, you're going to be on page 5. Let's see how well that does for you. Now, the people who say, okay, we're willing to pay $80 a click because we know that if we do one roof, we're going to make $1,000. Well, they're going to be beating you all day long, but they're going to be paying that $80 a click all day long. So there's Google AdWords. Something else that I want to go over too is your display ads. Display ads, again, I've seen people place them themselves. You can do it through Google, but it is a little bit harder. Display ads are the ads you see on random websites, whether it's your email, whether it's an ESPN.com, whether it's a Fox News, a CNN, any sort of website. You're going to see these top ads that are banner ads. They're at the very top of the page, and they're just a picture. Think of that like a billboard. So you don't want a ton of words in it. You don't want a ton of information. You want to try to grab someone. It's a billboard. You might only get someone's attention for 2 seconds. So you need to say something impactful in that 2 seconds. So that is a display ad. Now we also have pre-roll and mid-roll ads. Now those are video ads. So I'm sure we've all been on like YouTube or on social media or something online where we want to watch a video. So we can hit play, but before we can watch the video that we actually want to watch, there's an ad that pops up. That's a pre-roll ad. Those can typically be 5 seconds, 15 seconds, or 30 seconds. One thing that's really nice about it, I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that you can hit skip on that ad. Well, that's not fair. That person's paying for that ad that you skip through. That kind of stinks. Well, here's the good thing about it. If you hit skip, the advertiser doesn't pay for it. So if you're doing pre-roll ads, I highly recommend, say your business in the first 5 seconds. I see some of these national companies, cool. It's literally someone walking on a beach and they don't say anything for the first 15 or 20 seconds. How many people are hitting skip? And if they would just say their name in the first 3 or 4 seconds, like, if it was Toyota Motors and then they had someone walking on the beach, at least they'd get the message out there. So for those smaller businesses, if you run any pre-roll video at all, say your name in the first 5 seconds. So that's pre-roll, and then the mid-roll is it's the exact same thing. It's just in the middle of the video. So something else that I want to talk about too is you can target and you can retarget people. So what a target is, it's kind of like with social media, but you can actually do it through Google. Is you can actually pinpoint people and say, okay, I want to find people in this geography. I want to find people who make this kind of money, and you can really narrow things down and you can follow them around. Now, a retarget is actually really cool. A retarget is if someone goes onto your website, they actually place like a little flag on them and say, this person was on this website. We want to follow them around the internet for the next 30 days. I'm sure that you guys have all been on, let's say like an Amazon shopping, and you're looking at a hat or you're looking at a flashlight or something like that. Well, you don't buy it at that moment. You get busy, you have to actually go back to work or something. Well, maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, you're seeing that same flashlight or that same hat all over the internet. You're like, how did it know I was even looking at that like 2 weeks ago? It's because they're doing retargeting too. When you go onto their website, they know this is low-hanging fruit. Hey, we can get these people. We know we can get these people. So they follow you around wherever you go, and they hope that you have that impulse buy. Okay, it's payday. I guess I will buy that flashlight. I guess I will buy that hat. So retargeting is something we do with almost all of our clients. I highly recommend it. That's the low-hanging fruit. People are on your website because they're interested in your product. So now the last thing I want to go over is the email blast that people do. So here's just what I've seen personally work. And again, you're going to have people go back and forth. I typically don't like to buy a cold email list. I think a cold email list, a lot of people, they have more negative feelings than they do with anything else. It's if you constantly email people that have never used your product, that have never been to your store or anything like that, and you're just emailing them, the response rate is very, very low. I just personally have not seen it work nearly as well as the good businesses who they get your email when you use their store or when you use their product or whatever, and then they email you offers because they know that you already like their product because you already purchased from them before. So for instance, like with Nike, I probably get 1 or 2 emails a week where it's saying, hey, do you want to buy these shorts? Do you want to buy these shoes? Do you want to buy this shirt? Well, there's a lot of times where it's, okay, yeah. But if it's some brand I've never heard of or something I don't even know what it is, that's spam. Get rid of it. I'm not buying anything. It's just more of a headache than anything. So I would personally recommend to these small business owners, don't buy those cold email lists. It's make your own list, start to store that data, put it into a MailChimp, and then you can basically send out your own email blasts. Not very hard. The hardest part is just keeping track of it and making sure that it gets stored. But if you create a system internally, it's not that complicated, and it's something I do recommend to people. So, all right. Well, that is this week's episode on digital advertising. This is Ryan Pancoke with the Advertising Blueprint. Stop in next week. We're going to go over some of the other advertising mediums that you can use, pros and cons of each of them and the best ways to use them. Thanks so much.